This is the Critical Issues Summit, and the name of the group I'm representing is ACEC, American Council of Engineering Companies of Louisiana. And that is a group of engineering leaders, of course, in Louisiana, but we work with our counterparts all across the country. And our role is to bring the best ideas and the best business practices that we can to the industry to make a difference in infrastructure such as transportation and water and those sorts of things.
Thank you very much. What a difference a year makes, huh? It is my pleasure to be back with you this morning and spend a little time with you. I was inaugurated earlier this week, as you know, and what I said then, I will restate it today because it's what I believe. We have tremendous opportunities in Louisiana, and I'm excited about our future. I'm extremely optimistic. I'm bullish on Louisiana. But as we gather this morning, we do so amidst plenty of challenges, and we are not going to realize those opportunities. We're not going to move forward together if we don't tackle those challenges first, and so obviously that is my first order of business as governor. And I want to thank you for the opportunity to be here with you again this year. You know, I was saying on my way in the door this morning that last year really was an eye-opening experience for me because it was the first time that I had been to a forum with all four, well, the other three major candidates for governor. And I will be very honest with you. You don't know what to expect. But when I left the room that morning, I said, you know, I'm going to win this race. It was just something about that experience and sitting there. And they're all good people, and they've contributed much to the state and to the nation. But I just looked at that discussion that we had and the command of the issues, and I said, you know, I believe that I belong on the stage. And really from that point forward, I guess my confidence level actually increased, although it wasn't terribly low going into the meeting either. So I did commit back in February of last year when Ken asked if I would return to the Critical Issue Summit. And so here I am. I want to thank you for that invitation. 1 week into the job, we've already done some critical things, I think, to move the state forward. We're going to rise above partisan politics. Look, the stakes are just too high, I believe. So I'm asking that people, to the maximum extent possible, just shed the party labels and let's put Louisiana first, and let's be Louisianans and not Republicans or Democrats, and let's see if we can find common ground in order to pursue the common interest, and that's going to be critically important. So I'm going to partner with the legislature, with business and industry, different interest groups, local government, and working people across the state to put Louisiana first and find solutions. I will tell you what I told the Louisiana Association of Business and Industry yesterday. If there's anything to demonstrate my willingness, my desire to work the full spectrum for the benefit of Louisiana, within an hour's time, I was with the President of the United States yesterday, and then I was addressing Louisiana Association of Business and Industry, because we all have to work together. And I will tell you that I, as the governor of Louisiana, appreciated the fact that the President came to Baton Rouge. It gave me an opportunity to visit with him. I shared with him some things that are of particular concern to me and to our state, some of them around the Medicaid expansion, others around different CMS disallowances, which don't really involve you all in this room so much. But he invited me to ride with him in the vehicle that they call the Beast. I didn't realize that's what they called it, but I think I understand now why they call it that. And we were on the way from Baton Rouge Airport to his hotel. And the fact of the matter is the route took us very close to the portion of I-10 where there's one travel lane. And the mayor was in the vehicle with me, as was Congressman Richmond. But we took that opportunity to point out to the President that this may be the only place in the United States of America where an interstate highway has one through travel lane. He said he had no idea that such a place existed. And then that allowed me to segue into a request that I had made of him, or that I then made of him, I should say, for $100 million that we would ask for under the Nationally Significant Highway and Freight Projects Discretionary Program. You know, part of the transportation bill that just got passed in Congress. And what we're going to do, and by the way, I really believe we stand a great chance in having that request favorably acted upon by the administration. And I will be having additional meetings with the Secretary of Transportation at Washington to reinforce the request. But what we're planning to do is take that $100 million and improve capacity along a stretch of I-10 to I-49 across the Atchafalaya Basin. That will then free up dollars that we have allocated to that work, and then we will do some additional work to include rebuilding and widening the part of I-10 that I just talked about, and then also $30 million for the environmental study for the entire rail corridor connecting Baton Rouge and New Orleans, $10 million to design the I-10 Loyola interchange leading to the new terminal being built at the New Orleans airport, and another $20 million to construct a relocated Washington Street exit on I-110 in Baton Rouge. So it is incredibly important that you take advantage of the opportunities that you're given to communicate and to build relationships, because what we're talking about are discretionary dollars. And when you want someone to allocate discretionary dollars to you, you have to have the ability to communicate and ask for them. You ought to have the relationship that's most conducive to having someone favorably consider the request. So as your new governor, I just want to tell you that not only was riding in the beast kind of a neat thing to do, and I told the president that, it gave me the first opportunity to talk to him about things that are of benefit to Louisiana. And I want you to know in this room that I spent most of that time talking about transportation money from Washington. And I believe, based on the response that I got from him that night, the response I got from him again yesterday morning with some of the staff around him, and now I can tell you that Sean has already received word from Washington, D.C., that the folks in Washington have already received that request too. So we're going to work extremely hard pursuing the resources necessary to advance the interests of the people here in Louisiana. After all, those are our federal tax dollars too. And I don't know, there might be another state somewhere with more acute needs for transportation infrastructure projects, but I don't govern those states. I'm going to ask for our share back here in Louisiana. In fact, I'll ask for more than our share as long as they'll let me sit at the table. And I just want you to know that's how I'm going to approach being governor. And I do think relationships matter. I think communications matter. And in a year, we're going to have another president. I don't know who it's going to be. I don't know what party. But I promise you, given the opportunity, I'm going to take the same approach, and I will be asking that president for assistance here in Louisiana too, because it's the right thing to do for the people that I serve and the people that you all serve. Now, with respect to transportation, I said a couple things in here a year ago. I said that we ought to make sure that the Transportation Trust Fund is cleaned up. We ought not be diverting money out of the Transportation Trust Fund to pay for things that don't relate to ports, but primarily to roads and bridges and to construction and to maintenance. Well, we then went into session. I voted for a bill to raise the automobile transfer title fee from $18.50 to $68.50 in order to make sure that there would be the additional revenue necessary to move the state police out of the Transportation Trust Fund so that we could keep faith with the people of Louisiana, and they would know that as they're pumping gas and diesel into their cars and trucks, that the taxes they were going to be paying were going to be to fix the roads and the bridges. So I went out of here and I took that hard vote because nobody wants to vote for a fee increase of $50. Now, I will tell you, I learned a couple things about that. One, you should never go 30 years without increasing a fee, because that's what had happened. And other states charge around that $68.50 for that, but we were still charging $18.50, and so there was a fair amount of sticker shock. But it was the right thing to do. And so we have an opportunity to move the state police out of the Transportation Trust Fund, except for all of the other budgetary pressures that we have, and I'm going to get more into that in just a moment. But as it stands today, I want you to know that I have instructed Jay Darden, the Commissioner of Administration, that the budget we're going to propose to the legislature will not have a diversion out of the Transportation Trust Fund for the Department of Public Safety. So, it's also important that if we're ever going to go to the people of Louisiana or to the legislature and seek more money for the Transportation Trust Fund to fund this backlog of projects that we need to do, we've got to restore the faith of the people of Louisiana. We've got to restore the trust, I guess I should say. So that's a critical first step, I think, if we're ever going to try to do that. And so it's also the right thing to do from that perspective. I also remain committed to a second thing that I told you that I would do, and that is allocate an additional 25% of the annual capital outlay program each year to transportation projects. That's an additional $75 million. So those two things alone, if we are successful, would mean an additional $135 million a year for transportation. Is it enough to get rid of the backlog? No. But $135 million is still $135 million. And it is another big step in the right direction. But as I say that, just like we have budgetary pressures, I want you to understand that last month, for the first time in 30 years, the state of Louisiana took out a short-term loan to keep paying for the capital outlay projects that are already in the process, because the cash was going to run out before the next scheduled bond sale. Now, that hasn't happened in 30 years, but that's where we are today in the capital outlay process, and so I just want to make sure you all are aware of that. Now, it's also important that we do things with respect to workforce development and education. We're going to do that. I know that you all need additional highly skilled, well-trained employees. We want them to come from Louisiana, so we cannot keep chipping away at higher education and expect that we're going to have a better trained workforce. And while the forum last year didn't deal specifically with higher education, you all need to know in this room that over the last 8 years, not a state in the nation disinvested more in higher education than Louisiana did. And at the same time, no state in the nation raised tuition more than the state of Louisiana did over the last 8 years. So we're gonna do better in that regard, but it is gonna be a particular challenge. We know that the current funding structure is unsustainable for our institutions of higher education, but also for many of our young adults who are being priced out of higher education altogether or driven to other states. We cannot afford in Louisiana to lose our best and brightest students to other states because they believe they have a better opportunity to live the American dream by getting a good education, a good job, or a rewarding career elsewhere. We just cannot have that in Louisiana. And by the way, there are many reasons I ran for governor, but that is the #1 reason. We have got to keep our best and brightest at home. We've got to make sure that there's opportunity here for people to be successful and to contribute. So we're going to elevate higher education as a critical investment in Louisiana, and it's going to be what builds prosperity in Louisiana, I know, and it truly is an investment. It's not just an expenditure item that ranks on the same level as other expenditure items. Now, the reason that that's going to be difficult, and the reason that it's going to be difficult to fund this transportation infrastructure backlog, is we have tremendous budgetary problems in Louisiana. At least the worst in a generation. There are some old timers, even older than Dwayne Cowart, who tell me they may be the worst that they've ever seen. I'm not sure about that. I just know that they are significant. And we're going to rise to the challenge, but it is going to be particularly difficult. What I want you to know is, since the Revenue Estimating Conference met in November, so that was just a couple of months ago, we now know that the state faces a $750 million shortfall closing our books on June 30th of this year. Now, the Joint Legislative Committee on the Budget met in November to fix the mid-year problems, if you remember. But obviously that didn't happen. And $750 million is a lot of money under any circumstance. But when you get late in the fiscal year, if you annualize that amount, it is a huge number to come up with and to deal with. But we are going to do that. And in fact, when I leave here in just a few minutes, I'll be going back to meet with my staff to finalize some of the proposals that we're going to make to do that. Now, next fiscal year, that's the year that starts July 1st, we are $1.9 billion short on a continuation budget basis. Now, that is where we are. It's not pretty, but it is the truth. And it doesn't do anyone any good to pretend that we're better off than we are. We have to be honest with ourselves and with one another. And quite frankly, the approach that has been taken in the state of Louisiana over the last 7 years has not worked. And I am committed that at this point next year, we're not going to be right back at the same place trying to figure out what we can do by patching something together and just doing temporary fixes and trying to hobble along from year to year, just praying things get better. Now, I am a praying man. I believe in the power of prayer, but I don't believe it's prudent to pray at night and make poor decisions during the day. Most often, those are not rewarded. And so we're going to have to be prudent and wise during the day and faithful at night. And that'll be the difference, I believe, as we move forward. Now, and I did say at the inauguration the other day, I would much rather have inherited $1 billion surplus rather than a $1.9 billion shortfall. Because I'm going to propose some things that people aren't going to like. I'm going to propose some things you're not going to like. I want you to know I'm going to propose some things that I don't like. But the only thing worse is not doing them. And so I'm asking all of you to make sure that when you see proposals coming out, that you use that as an opportunity to engage and provide feedback. My administration has been directed by me to reach out and work with people to fashion plans where we find common ground so that if you don't like a proposal that I come out because it's particularly harmful to you or your business or your sector, reach out and talk to us. And by the way, we're going to be asking to meet with you. But what I'm asking you to do is don't just tell us you don't like our approach. Tell us how we can get where we're trying to go in a different manner that is better for you. But it isn't like we can avoid shared sacrifice if we're going to fix this problem. But there is shared prosperity on the other side of that sacrifice if we will just all do it. And I believe if we can all put up a little, then we can all gain much in the end. And so that's the approach that we're going to take. Because escalating use of one-time money, excessive fund sweeps, tax exemptions and credits that are more generous than we could afford, that cost more than they were ever supposed to cost, they never produced the benefit that they were supposed to produce, all of that taken together, plus a drop in oil prices, slow corporate income and sales tax collections, a drop in mineral tax collections, all of these things are hitting us at one time. So all options are going to be on the table. We're going to make strategic budget reductions. We're going to increase efficiencies. We're also going to accept our federal tax dollars back. And while I know I'm not speaking to a group of people in the healthcare business, I want you to know because money is fungible, every wise decision we make benefits every element of the budget. Now, the fact of the matter is, going forward, maintaining the status quo with healthcare is not possible. We are going to have a reduction in DSH, which is the disproportionate share hospital. This is reimbursement dollars we get from the federal government to pay for uninsured. That reduction is going to start in 2017, and by 2020, it'll be 75% of our DSH money. Now, DSH is how we pay for our safety net hospital system. Now, when that money is cut by 75% and you haven't reduced your number of uninsured, you have no way to pay for your hospitals. And when a hospital closes, it doesn't just close for the poor or the uninsured or the Medicaid population, it closes for everyone. And if you want to see that up close and in person, go to the Baton Rouge Mid-City and try to go to that emergency room. It doesn't matter whether you have a Blue Cross card in your pocket or not. That emergency room is closed. That will play out all over the state of Louisiana if we don't avail ourselves of the Medicaid expansion. It really is just that simple. And those are our federal tax dollars. And right now they're going to 30 other states so that their working poor get health care in their hospitals and in their clinics by their doctors, while ours go without. And not just our working poor going without, our providers are going without that reimbursement. Now, that is not a sustainable situation. And so we're going to do the Medicaid expansion. I signed the executive order this week. We're all going to be better off for it. And it's not that there isn't a cost. There is a cost to it. But the cost is much smaller than not doing it and then having to find a way to pay for all of these uninsured to gain access to care. So I wanted to explain that decision. And I read something a while ago on the way over here about the SNAP benefit. I want you to know that for 19 straight years, Louisiana has operated under a waiver because our unemployment rate has exceeded the national average by 20%. And all 8 years of Bobby Jindal's administration, he asked for and operated under the same waiver so that these able-bodied adults without children could continue to collect, to have these SNAP benefits because of the high unemployment. Now, he saw fit on his way out of office not to seek that waiver again for my first year, after he had it for all 8, and while unemployment in Louisiana is actually going up. And knowing that the only program that we tried, because it was in Tangipahoa Parish as a pilot program, that's my home parish, it is legislation that I consented to, it was a failure trying to make sure that these people got access to job training or got access to education or to a job in order to get them off of the SNAP benefits. So I am not in my first year going to change that. We are going to study it. I have already directed the folks at the Workforce Commission to work with DCFS and others to try to figure out a better way to transition people off. But I want you to understand, 19 straight years we've operated under the waiver, all 8 years of Bobby Jindal's term, and I'm being roundly criticized because I believe with unemployment going up, now is not the time to cut off these SNAP benefits. Now, if you're going to criticize me for that, do that. But just be fair about it. And I'm not really, I guess, pointing at you all in this room, except for some of the people in the back of the room, maybe. But I just wanted to understand, to explain that, because many people they think that I made this decision all by myself and that I'm changing the way that we've done things in Louisiana. That is not the case. But we have a lot of challenges, and we're going to have to meet them together. I want to tell you a couple of other things. Corporate tax collections so far this fiscal year. I want you to know that they are a negative $200 million. You heard me right. Negative $200 million. We paid out of the Treasury $200 million more than we have collected to corporations in Louisiana. That is not a sustainable situation either. And it is part of the problem, because contributing to this shortfall is much lower than expected corporate income taxes. We have lost all sense of balance and reasonableness. We just simply have to tighten things up. We've got to move forward in a smarter, better way. And when we do that, understand this is not some simple belt tightening exercise. I'm not going to get up and say, well, we're going to continue to do more with less. I mean, we've been hearing that for 7 years. If you can always do more with less, one day you can do everything for nothing. Doesn't work that way in your business. It doesn't work that way in state government either. But we have to find a way to do more. But in the meantime, what we are going to do is we're going to stabilize the situation in the state of Louisiana. You know, it's kind of like that patient. I'm not a doctor, obviously, and I didn't sleep at the Holiday Inn Express last night. But I did sleep in a pretty neat place, I want to tell you. But we've got to stabilize the patient. We've got to stop the bleeding. And then we'll get up off the gurney and start walking down the hallway, and then we'll get out and do some more exercise, and we'll start running. But the first priority is to stabilize the patient. That's what we're going to do in a special session that's going to start right around Valentine's Day. It'll go for about 3 weeks. And we're going to have to fix the revenue situation in Louisiana. And it is going to be a combination of cuts, efficiencies, expanding flexibility to allocate cuts across a broader spectrum of the government, of the budget, especially looking at those those statutory dedications that would otherwise be state general fund dollars. But I don't want you to think that that's going to free up a whole lot of savings, because the reason those expenditure items are already dedicated is because they are important. And they serve a very, very valid purpose as well. But on the margin, there's some savings to be realized there. We're going to look at the tax credits and tax rebates. We're going to bring our federal tax dollars back. But I cannot sit here today with numbers like I just told you and tell you that in and of itself is going to be enough. We are going to transition to a better structure, but between now and then, we're going to have to bridge that. And so when I leave here in a few minutes, we're going to go back and we're going to make some decisions about what that's going to look like. It's going to look like a menu of options. It's going to be a buffet line where we're going to walk down and take certain items off the buffet line and put it on our tray. And very little of that's going to be apple pie and ice cream. It's going to be the spinach and the Brussels sprouts. But it's what we have to do at this point in time. I do want to ask you to remember that we have to stabilize things, and it is going to take shared sacrifice in order to have shared prosperity. But my commitment to you is to working with you and allowing you to provide your input so that together we can chart the best course possible for Louisiana. We have to work together because the challenges are so enormous that I simply cannot do this alone. The changes that we seek will be better, but they won't happen overnight. And so you can expect that these meetings that I'm talking about will start next week. Your partnership is important to solving these challenges. So I would just ask that you work with us in good faith. And if you hear something you don't like, in Louisiana and I guess elsewhere, one of the things that we typically do is we retreat to our corner and we stop communicating and we just start throwing bombs. That isn't going to be helpful. That is not going to be helpful. But if you hear something you don't like and you have a better way to go about it, reach out to us. Go talk to Sean. Go talk to Kimberly Robinson, the Revenue Secretary. Go talk to Jay Darden. Call me. We'll sit down and try to figure it out. But we are going to need to work together. And I think I have demonstrated in my first week, based on the budget preparations that we're doing as they relate to the Transportation Trust Fund, and also as it relates to the way we're planning to run the capital outlay process, and my meeting with the President this week and talking about transportation infrastructure projects in Louisiana and my request for additional assistance from him, that I'm going to do everything I can, not just to help the state of Louisiana generally, but to make sure that you are successful. Because if we don't have the revenues necessary to undertake these projects, you don't have work to do either. And so there is a symbiotic relationship between what you and me and what I'm trying to do for the state and what you all are trying to do. And we're all better off if we work together. I know that I realize that, and I know that you all realize that too. So let's just go out and make it happen. I want to thank you again for the opportunity to be with you this morning. And before I sit down, I told you at the beginning how optimistic I am. I told you how bullish I am on our future, how excited I am about things in Louisiana. That is true. But unfortunately, most of my talk has to do with pointing out where we are and some of the tough medicine we're going to have to take to get out of it. And then people say, well, he said he's excited, but then he spent 20 minutes telling us what bad shape we're in. Well, I am excited. And so I want to finish where I started in telling you that with your help and working together and with different interest groups around the state of Louisiana, we are going to pull ourselves up out of this ditch, and we're going to have great days ahead, and you all are a big part of that. So thank you very much. God bless you.
What was your reaction when you got the call from Washington?
I was excited because I think the idea has merit, and I think Washington saw the merit, and they saw the interest in the state to participate with the federal government to move some of their priorities. And Washington has a priority right now for rail. They've got a priority for freight, and they have a priority for working with state departments of transportation and states. And so what we saw in this conversation is a very friendly, a very cooperative and collaborative conversation, and I'm hopeful that we'll get a good response in the near future.
A year ago, you were here as a candidate. Tell us your feelings now here as governor.
Well, look, obviously it's gratifying to be back and to say that we're putting together a budget that's going to look like I told them it was going to look, that my commitment to the issues around transportation infrastructure remain very solid, and the things that I told them a year ago that I was committed to, I remain committed to. We're going to make it happen. Transportation is so important. It allows for people to have a better quality of life, in addition to for goods to move in commerce. So it's important for a variety of reasons. We have a tremendous backlog of transportation issues, about $12 billion worth. That's not going to be fixed overnight. But you eat an elephant one bite at a time, and we're going to start on that process.
I have a very favorable reaction to that. He outlined an immediate boost in infrastructure spending for transportation of $135 million a year, which is a great start. And we have been talking to him about an even greater need to catch up to years and years of neglect on Louisiana's highway system.